I think it was Jim Beggarly last night was telling me about, he was landing in the fog, and the lights would tip down, and he said he had one of them hang up, so it wasn't coming down even, and it gave him an artificial horizon as he was coming through, and then he saw the trees, and he's like, I knew I was in big trouble. He said, and I whipped it around, he said, whoo, but he said, yeah, and then he figured out that light was hung up, it wasn't all the way down, so he had different angles, lights reflecting off the fog.
You bet.
Who?
You bet.
That does not sound like it would be a good experience.
The optics of landing and taking off, as far as that goes, are a real problem. We'd one of my projects with the VFW at home, we got a couple of the F-16 pilots to come and talk to us during Memorial Day. And the one guy in particular, a light colonel, he'd had some time in Afghanistan and around the Saudi Arabian, the Middle East. And he kind of choked up for a while, but he caught it again. He was describing a friend of his that took off and lost it in the fading sunlight. It's tricky working in a fading light. And evidently the guy just got disoriented and failed to eject.
Oh. Did you ever have to eject or use the extraction system?
I never used it, not once. I did consider it one night. I don't know if you're familiar with what a chip light is.
Yes, I am. The chip light goes out, that's an attention getter.
Boy and how.
So explain that to everybody what a chip light is.
Okay, there's a magnetic plug in the bottom of the engine crankcase. And it's just nothing more than two D-shaped things that are magnetic that will suck any iron out of the oil. And once it makes across there, it illuminates a tiniest little light. It's about this big, and it's right underneath the gun sight, so it's square in your 12 o'clock. And that light at night, when you're 300 miles deep in Indian country, is that big. There is a recording. One of the spookies had a radio, a tape recorder with him. And he had a recording of that particular flight. That was Mort Plum, is his name. And
did he give you that recording?
No,
oh.
I didn't want it.
I imagine you sounded like those guys on the ground.
You got it. You're exactly right. I was Joe Cool saying, hey, I'm going to get rid of the rest of my napalms. I've got a chip light. And the recording says it all. Only dogs could hear my voice. I got a chip light.
Yeah, and the reason for the chip light is if there's metal, something could be coming apart in there and you really need to be aware of it. It could be minor or it could be catastrophic really quick.
It could be, yeah, the engine would seize.
Yeah.
And you never know.
And I imagine the Skyraider's got the glide path of a rock. It's a pretty big aircraft.
At that time, yeah. I would have had to clean the wings off and do the best I could, I guess, to get someplace. There were a lot of areas in North Laos that were relatively safe, but there were also areas where if they caught you as a pilot, you might be in deep trouble.
Isn't that where the Pathet Lao were operating pretty heavy up in northern Laos?
Yes, sir.
And I think it was, what was the general up there? That was always,
Vang Pao.
Yeah, General Vang Pao was battling the Pathet Lao.
He died not very long ago, 3 or 4 years ago.
Did he? I did not hear that.
4 or 5, and he was still fighting the war. He got in trouble with the cops for trying to export automatic weapons back to Laos.
He never gave up.
He never gave up.
He believed in his culture and his people. And
you bet.
I remember hearing that how when he left, he was like, I'm coming back, and he meant it.
He meant it. He meant every word of it.
Yeah.
The Hmong tribesmen are in a kind of a tight-knit group in the St. Paul area in Minnesota. And they invited me to come talk to them about 4 years ago, something like that, on Thanksgiving Day. And I remember asking them about General Vang Pao, and every single man I asked or spoke to or talked to spoke of that man with reverence. He's dead, Rich. He's not with us anymore, but we sure miss him.
He was a good leader and a good warrior.
Damn right.
I remember seeing pictures, and he was so young.
He was, yeah, he just wasn't that old.
Yeah, he was, a very young guy to be running an entire army, and he did very well with the conditions and what he had to work with. Because the more I talk to people and the more I study, the onslaught of the communists coming down through Laos with all the munitions, and people don't understand that they haven't learned that part of history, why we were there. The communists went there to run all the munitions into South Vietnam, and then you had guys like General Vang Pao up there at the front with all of their tribesmen trying to keep that at bay and keep those people out. And so, yeah. And then we were there trying to keep everything from being in the South because we wouldn't attack Haiphong Harbor because it was a political concern.
Decision, yep.
And that all went back to Korea. Nobody wanted to get the Chinese involved in another battle after we pushed the 38th parallel, so we were in a war playing half an offense going, well, maybe, and that's no way to go into a war.
That is an accurate summation of the whole situation.
Yeah, you have it.
War is a
You
total...
should not go to war if you're not planning on going with everything.
Sun Tzu.
Yes, Sun Tzu was... I remember each time a president is elected, I'm like, God, I hope they read Sun Tzu's The Art of War. If we wind up somewhere, you really should have. It's a small book. It's an easy read.
It's short, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
but
just
it's
13,
right to the point.
13 chapters.
Yeah.
No big deal.
No, and
Von Clausewitz. I haven't, Von Clausewitz.
okay.
I haven't read his book yet.
I have not. No.
But he wrote a book on war.
Did he?
You bet. And the principles still apply.
Yeah. I think the opening chapter was, war is the most serious undertaking of business. And wasn't that it with Sun Tzu? He was
Something like...
He said it was the most serious business and you don't enter into it lightly. If you're going to go.
Go all out.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like anything else. When you study history and you can look back at it. I studied German, I studied World War II. And when I was studying where we were at the beginning of World War II, logistically, other than having all kinds of resources, we shouldn't have won. I mean,
that's
Hitler
true.
Had us, we were down to, our army had been totally disbanded and guys were practicing shooting machine guns with stovepipes. They were practicing, it was a stovepipe, and they would sit out and a truck would drive by and they would, mimic moving the gun, and they would throw bags of flour at the truck saying it was a tank. And I was like, we didn't have anything. I think we had 18 tanks at the time. It was very small, the number of tanks we had, because Patton had just gotten them, and it was small. We had very few tanks. I could be wrong on the 18, but it was not a big number, not compared to what we walked into.
Yeah.
Our industrial might is what really saved us.
There are a couple things that are key. One is fuel was destroyed, and that helped a lot. Ball bearings, that was strategic. That helped a lot. The rest of it was sheer mass, numbers.
Yeah.
Overwhelmed them.
Yeah. He made a huge strategic error when he attacked the Western Front and attacked the Russians. When he split his forces, it was just a matter of time.
Then it was over. Yeah. It just,
You can't bite everybody fight everybody.
We'd be speaking German.
Yes, we did.
Or Japanese.
Or Japanese, yes. But is there anything else you'd like to talk about, Rich?
Rich, that pretty much covers what the things that I have done that I can talk about. There are some things that are painful to me, and I'll just keep that all to myself.
May I ask you, when it came down to the mission of saving a man versus a bombing mission, what was that like when you knew a person's, somebody close by, whether it's a SAR, whether it was a prairie fire, whether it was troops in contact? What did that mean to you when you went in? What were you prepared to do?
All of those scenarios, prairie fire, TIC, troops in contact, so on and so forth. In the end, it would have been nice to come home, as far as that goes. But I had in my mind that if these guys need a hand, I'm going to stay with them and do the best I can, even if I run short of fuel and can't get home. The idea is the close air support is what it is. It's another arm of the guy on the ground, and he needs it. If and when he needs it badly. So I went into that combat with that thought in mind that if these guys call me for whatever reason, I'm going to stay with them until we get them out of trouble. And that was my mindset at that time. No, we didn't. Did I talk about Lima Site 36?
No.
I had the day before Lima Site 36 fell, I had a flight of 4 F-4s, and we knew there was an active shooting contest going on, but we didn't know much about it, disposition or where troops were or whatever. But they did tell me one thing. Intel said, go on up there, they're going to mark the target with a 105. Willie Pete. All right, works for me. We got up there, and sure enough, they lobbed a 105 out to the east side of the site, which is kind of on the uphill. Well, it's sort of uphill in that country. There's a dip in there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, said that's where you want it. Yep, that's where the bad guys everywhere. All right. Well, now, about 3 days earlier, I had a situation where it was a flight of 4 F-4s, and 3 was calling lead, sir. Nobody calls lead, sir. Nobody, unless it's a general or a full colonel. And lead, being having some years on him, did what all old heads do. He was diving, pulled up, and released the weapons. They hit the ground 5 miles from the target. And I rode him up safety of flight. And I got my ass chewed for that. But let's face it, there are guys that belong in the cockpit and there are guys that don't. And this is a judgment call on the part of the instructors in this game. They cleared me to fly. I don't know why. I'm not really all that confident, but for some reason or other, got away with it. Anyhow, here's my 4 F-4s overhead. Wall to wall CBU. People killing weapon. Really is. Said, all right, we ain't having no short rounds here. You guys can run in on any easterly heading you choose. Spread it out. I want you to run in on anywhere from 160. And I gave them numbers around a 030 or something like that. Run in from the west side. And I don't want any short rounds. None. Is that clear? Acknowledge in order. 2, 3, 4. All right. So I went down there and put down 2 smokes, one fairly close to the site and one a little farther out. And I told the guys, okay, you got your orders. You're cleared in hot, obliterate everything in between those 2 smokes. And they did. When they got finished, there was nothing in there but arms and legs. They sent back a report, I think it was about 3 days later, that we got the report that there were 250 plus KBA. So we took out the entire east prong of that attack, and they had to reman that from the north and south prongs. If I had only known at that time, we had the means, we had the weapons, we could have eliminated the threat all the way around.
I remember reading about that, and I believe, didn't they come up the backside or the steepest side that nobody expected?
I believe that's true.
Yes.
And I'm not totally familiar with that geography, and it's been a few years. Forgive me for that. But
now, can you tell me what the Lima sites were for folks out here so they can understand? We had several Lima sites around the area, and they were conducting what kind of an operation? What was their task at a Lima site? Mostly,
the Lima sites were safe areas. The L for Lima came from Laos, and which became Lima sites, which was an alternative name for the particular town or village or runway in the case of 36. We actually had an aircraft land at 36 and was recovered later by one of the heavy lift helicopters.
Weren't they also conducting electronics operations?
Okay, you're talking about Lima 98
Yes, Lima, that's what it was.
on the battleship Karst.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had, at one time, they had a functioning TACAN up there, which you could bomb off. It was not that precise, but it would at least get you in the area. They had an RBS, the radar scoring, and they would arc light with that. And they could get weapons through the weather and down into North Vietnam.
That became a very sought-after target for the North Vietnamese
The North, yeah,
to eliminate that set of eyes that we could work with.
they wanted to take that out badly, and they did in the long run. General Vang Pao offered to lead a charge up that hill to go to retake that site. And I do not know the exact circumstances of how he was dissuaded on that thing. General had a very touchy sense of honor and really good military instincts. I think he would have done just fine if they would have turned him loose and let him go.
Mm-hmm. He seemed like a fierce warrior.
He
But
was.
very smart. It wasn't just wild. He was, from what I've read,
It was controlled.
yeah. But he was
Quite
well
serious.
respected by his adversary.
Boy,
I'd
you
say.
got that right.
Yeah.
You got that right.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic.